Evening, gentlemen. Recording in fact. Why is it always an American accent, Stephen?
Oh, I don't know. It's a Zoom thing, isn't it?
Yeah. Anyway, first off, guys, I'd like to apologise for the last time I was up for doing a demo and I didn't show up. It was because my wife booked a surprise trip for my birthday, and of course we were flying on the morning of
Friday.
The demo, yeah.
Yeah.
So it just all. I know Tim jumped in, and but yeah, it was one of them. Wife failed to communicate because it was a surprise. So that was that.
I'm surprised you were invited.
Oh mate, it was. Yeah, we went to Lisbon. It wasn't bad. It was all right. You know, it was a nice bit of sunshine and yeah, a few glasses of wine and a bit of seafood was okay. Anyway, so we're into the end of the first month of the 23 season here in Wales. It was on the 3rd of March. I fished the 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th, and it was great. Trout fishing, not salmon, trout fishing. It was great, really good, and we were getting them on large dark olives and March brown dries, which was nice.
Oh, wow.
And then we had some really high water for most of the month, which blew it out until really this weekend just gone. So March browns are still here.
Hang on, let me mute Kev.
Yeah. So the March browns are still here. The large dark olives are still here, but the Grannom have started. And I saw it big time on Monday. Like really significant hatches, masses and masses and masses of flies, like tens of thousands coming off. It's always like that, but that was the first massive hatch I've seen. I caught 2 trout on Monday, and well, after that it just went dead. So now the river's gone up another 2 meters the last few days, so we're blown out again. So it's not been the best start to the season this year, but hopefully from next week we get a bit of warm weather, or starting to warm up, and you know the Grannom will still be here, and then we'll be getting into iron blues and olive uprights, yellow maize, and then Mayfly. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to all that. So the sort of stuff I've been tying this week, really. Hang on, let me swap cameras. So I've been doing a few salmon flies. So this is one of my favorites. These are for my box. These are not for other people. So this is an adaptation of a fly called the Nusk Grub, very old fly, particular to this river, the Usk. The original version would not likely to have had the front hackle. It would have just had the jungle cock wings, and it would also have had a wound gold pheasant tail, not a clump like that. But traditionally, these flies were quite big. You know, 2 to 3 inches long. This one's a size 10. So when you start winding those hackles, it gets very busy. So I've been doing these. This one I call Hot Arm Billy. This is one of my patterns. Really simple. So the wing is Arctic Runner, which is a type of horsehair, wild pony actually, just a blue hackle. Chartreuse body with a silver rib and like a really bright head. I like them quite simple because I lose a lot in trees, and where I fish it's very overgrown, so I don't like throwing, you know, a load of jungle cock up a tree. And then the other thing we've been doing is cripple patterns. So this is a March brown cripple. So it's got this is interesting. This here is the first fly I've ever tied with a biot. Never ever. I've seen them. I know everybody uses them, but I don't know why, but I've never got around to doing it. But there's a guy in here now, Stephen, has sent me some of his biots, and I thought I'd give them a try, and they came out. I thought I like that. So that was the first sort of cripple. So with this one, what we do with these is we clip them like this. So I've clipped off the hackle on one side of the fly. So what it does is it lays flat on the surface of the water. The wing holds it in the surface. So for knockdown guns and stuff like that, it's really quite useful. And you can tie them any size for any olive hatch. Here's one for the large dark olive. So the only difference is the color of the biox, and I've used dark dun and hackles and tails. So quite a successful little fly. I've been playing around with these hooks. Normally I would try them on sort of standard dry fly hooks. I don't know why I really picked it up, but I quite like these, this sort of curved look. So that's that. So that's really been this week's activity. Oh, this is more like the large dark olives I normally tie. And this body is EP fibers. So it's this stuff. So to get that effect with that rib, like in here, you can see it's all mixed together. It's all different colors, yeah? So I've just pulled in all sorts of different colors and mixed it up. And I randomly pull out bunches. But to get that effect on the body of that fly, is 4 strands of olive EP fiber and 1 strand of black. And it doesn't matter how you tie it in, it gives you that rib as you go. And if you do it over a little bed of glue, it's really tough. Yeah, just a different material to try, guys. You know, sort of gives you that sort of quill effect, if you like. Yeah, so that's what we've been doing this week. So I'll start you off with a wet fly. I always get a bit nervous when I start doing these demos, so I'm going to start with something nice and easy. So I'm going to do like a really old-fashioned wet fly from the husk. And it was published back in about, I don't know, 1845 or something in the field. Obviously, it wasn't on one of these hooks. And this is a fairly standard old-fashioned style of wet fly for the husk. Very, very simple. I'm tied in a different way because some of these old flies, you know, when you get hold of them, you see them in, you know, antique shops and stuff like that. You buy them. I take them to pieces to see how they tie them. And this was a surprise when I got to this. So this just uses dubbing, a hackle, and obviously a thread. So that's a size 14 hook. The sort of typical hooks they tied on around here were almost long shank. So it would have been much longer than this. And they only tied on half of the hook. So they tied short, you know. I don't know why, but I think it's probably a Scottish influence. So this is a dun pen hackle. So I prepared this just like a dry fly. Oops, broke that one. So I prepare this like a dry fly and tie it in by its base, not by its tip. And I tie it in at the eye first, going out over the eye. So I catch it in just underneath, like that, and start winding back. So I've secured my hackle. Stab myself with the scissors. I take the thread straight back. Get rid of that fibre in a sec. So put a thread base down and return it just behind the hackle. And some dubbing. So, I mean, the typical things they use were mole, hair, you know, normal sort of stuff. There's quite a few of them would have peacock bodies. This is just a bit of hair. Let me get rid of that. So from here on in, it's really easy. So we've tied in the hackle. Put on a little bit of dubbing. Start dubbing at the front of the fly. Nice buggy body. Turn to the back. Leave a bit of thread showing. So several of these flies had same dressing but with different color threads. So yellow was common and red was common, and those would be a half stone and an infallible. So one would be an olive imitation and one would be an iron blue. So then you use your thread tighten up the body and put a ribbon. And you park your thread behind the eye. And just start winding the hackle as per normal. Don't actually stroke it too far back. You don't want that really swept back look. And that's the easiest sweat fly you'll ever tie. And an advantage of tying in that hackle first is you get these really tiny heads on them. You don't have to worry about leaving room to tie it in after you've done the body, you know. So that was the first one. So that's sort of typical wet fly. The guy that published it was a keeper on the River Us for Pontypool Park Estate. His name was William Senior. And sorry, the guy in the field was William Senior. The other guy escapes me for the minute. And he published a range of us patterns that I found quite interesting. So I started sort of researching into him and eventually found a photograph of the guy. It was later on in life, after he retired. He was head of the Us Gillies Association, but he had one arm and his left arm was literally a pirate's hook. So I started wondering, how the hell did he tie these flies? And he lost his arm in a mining accident when he was 9 years old. So anyway, so I did more and more research trying to track this down. And I found a piece in the Field magazine from turn of the last century. And in Abergavenny, the town I lived in, there's a jeweler's shop. Not there anymore, obviously, but there was a jeweler's shop. And the guy that owned the jeweler's shop, daughter, used to tie flies professionally for Pontypool Park Estate. So even though they were his patterns, he never ever tied them, she did. So I thought it was quite a nice little story.
What was that called, Paul?
I haven't got a name for it. He would have called that a blue dun. Yeah, it's not, they didn't really have names. On that list that he published, the only one that was named was a cockabonthie, and his dressing, it said the usual dressing. So that was in 1845. So the first version of the cockabonthie that we can find that actually specifies cockabonthie hackle came from Scorcher's book, which is about 1820. No, is it 1720? I can't remember. And it was called a Marlow Buzz. And the only difference between the Marlow Buzz and the cockabonthie is the hackle. The Marlow Buzz had a furnace hackle, and obviously the cockabonthie had a cockabonthie hackle. So it goes back a long way. So even in 1840, they just assumed everyone knew how to tie one. Pardon me?
Very good.
Can't hear you. Yeah, so that's the first one. And then the second one I thought I'd do is a nymph. I love dry fly fishing, but I think I love sight fishing with a nymph more. And I don't mean a gold head. I mean a fairly traditional nymph. The fish you can see, so you can see the reaction to the nymph. I use it a lot down on the chalk streams. It's not something you often get the chance to do on the Usk because it's a freestone, and you might get to see the odd fish now and again, but normally you don't see them until they start rising. So this fly, the other place I use it is Slovenia. I go down there every year, and it's all crystal clear down there, and the fish are all lined up. So this is like a fairly natural looking nymph. I tie it 14, 16, 12. I use a long shank nymph hook. These are full in mill. I was looking for some 14s, isn't it? So this is a sort of quite a heavy wire nymph hook, nice and strong, because those Slovenian fish can be quite big. There's nothing really special about this, but So I start this the same way as I did that wet fly. And I'll put a hackle in first. So now, once you put that hackle in, you know you can't go in front of it, right? It's like a measure. If you go in front of that hackle, you mess the fly up. So it's a bit of discipline as well. So I've used a hackle here with about the same gape as the hook. Maybe a little bit less. I don't know. We'll have a look now when it goes on. It's quite short. So that's about a head length back from the eye. So that's why I'm going to put this hackle in. And then just cover the shank of thread. So you want some lead wire? I use quite fine lead wire. You know, I bulk it up as I need it, or I'll put a bigger hook on, or maybe even a split shot just above the fly or something, you know, but you don't need a lot of this. So perhaps somewhere between a third and a half the shank, maybe. Just get that on. And then start covering it up. I'm using quite thin thread here. Normally I'd use a 6/0 on this, but this is 12/0, so it might take a little while to cover up and put a taper in. But that's what I'm trying to do, is just build up taper behind the thorax. Get a bit of shape to the body. There, don't work. And then the tail on this, I use this moose flank. It's quite, you know, the nymphs I pull out of the river and have a look at, the tails on them are quite robust. There's nothing really gentle about them or delicate. You know, they're there for a reason. They're quite robust things. So like tiny little CDL fibers or cockhackle fibers, I feel are a bit too subtle in a way. So I like using these quite tough hairs. I'm not a hair counter, so I just put a few in there. And they've got quite a curve in them, these hairs. And here's a tip for you. So I got this from tying salmon flies. So when you put them in a hair tapper, let's change my camera. So when you put them in a hair tapper, you know, and you tap away, don't tap vertically. Tap at an angle, say 45 degrees. And then when you pull them out, all the curves are going the same way. So you get nice even tips. If you stack it vertically, the curves go all different directions. So that's you know, if it doesn't matter, but if you're doing a fancy salmon fly, or you've got a curved material you're putting into a dry fly tail, that's a useful thing. So
Handy little tip.
Sorry?
Handy little tip, that.
Yeah, it works. When you put this in, you know, you sort of want to be capable of the hook or a little bit less. Catch it in the back and use your thread. Wind it down. Keep hold of it. Keep it on top of the shank. You've got that little stub of a tail. Get rid of your waist. Now, bodies on this could be thread, could be dubbing. I would prefer thread or say peacock quill, because dubbing sort of slows it down, I think. So I want to keep it as skinny as possible, really. A bit like buzzer fishing, you know. Catch that in on the side. Have you noticed when you tie in, say, a rib into a fly, and you tie it in and you've got the underbody, you're forming the underbody as you wind forward. As you wrap the thread, sometimes the rib follows the thread around the body of the fly and starts to twist round. Have you ever noticed that? No?
No.
Well, I won't tell you how to fix it then.
Perhaps you should.
No, it's yeah, it's just an idle thought. Little dab of glue, not too much. Nature gives us lovely materials, but they also give us problems to go with them, don't they? Like brittle, what do you call them? Peacock quills. Lost my hackle pliers, boys.
What's that,
Everybody,
a golden olive, Paul?
Pardon me?
Is it a golden olive quill?
Ah, it is. Says olive.
Just olive.
Yeah. I normally buy them in just natural, but they didn't have any in stock when I got these, so I just got the olive ones. But they're quite nice. And just wrap it forward. So you're just up on that lead. Catch it in. I like to put a thorax cover on these offs, but the materials that I use are pheasant tail. I like to use that stretchy stuff you use for the back of check nymphs, but I can't find any. I couldn't find any earlier, so I'm going to use pheasant tail. Pheasant tail can be a bit brittle, you know. So again, with pheasant tail, tapers from the butts to the tips. So my personal preference is to tie it in by the butts and pull it over the top so it's finer where you tie it off. Yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
I just catch it in on top. Try and get on top of the lead. Make sure it's on top. That's not quite right. It's close enough. So the dubbing for the thorax, you could just leave the thread there, but I do put a little bit of dubbing on. This is really fine hairs here, not the spiky stuff from the face. This is more around the sort of jowl area, and you can dub this down really quite fine. So I just put that on. I'm not looking for a leggy effect here. I'm looking to cover that lead with something sort of fairly natural. So I just put that in the right place. And then you park your thread in front of the hackle. And wind your hackle. Two turns is enough. Then you give it a bit of a center parting. Pull your thorax cover forward. Sorry that one. All those butts. You're using fairly fine thread. It's covering up stuff is hard, but it does keep a nice slim profile on the fly. So that's I call it my working nymph. And I just tie lots of these in, like I say, 12, 14, 16, maybe some 18s. But 14 and 16 would be the common ones. 12 for a March brown or a yellow May dun. But the rest of our mayflies here are quite small, apart from the Danica, of course. That's a nice little leggy pattern that fishes well. Sinks quite fast because there's nothing there really to hold it. You can add a bit of shot to the leader if you want, but I generally don't. Like this, I fish a place on the chalk called the Wilderness Fishery. The average depth is going to be no more than 2.5 feet, and you're fishing between runs of weed. So fishing leaded, very heavy nymphs or beadhead nymphs, later on in the season, not so much early on, but later on, you've got to be a bit of a miracle caster to make sure you get those flies in between the runs of weed, not in the weed. And I find these on dry fly rod with like a 14-foot leader, say, and the leader would only be a 4-foot length for, say, 12 pound, which I use white monofilament, white monofilament, and I grease it, and that's my indicator, and then a long tippet of 5x, say, and this is directly upstream fishing, and you can see the fish react to the fly, and I just love doing it. It's great. And the other fly I use in those situations is a scud pattern. So that's that one, working nymph. And while we're on the subject of these type of hackles, I'll do a dry fly. So
If any of you guys got any questions, if you unmute yourself, ask Paul the question, and then mute yourself again.
Derek, perfect timing. I was going to ask Paul if he planned on tying that scud he ties.
no, I'm not, because I've got I have to set up an epoxy lamp. Yeah, I could probably show you one, but I'll have to go out to my car and get them. But I'll show you one at the end. Have you seen one?
Brilliant.
Did we meet Derek at the Gwent open day?
Yeah,
Did I show you one there?
yeah.
Yeah.
I don't remember seeing it. I have a worse memory than Derek.
Okay. Yeah, that fly would take a whole demo on its own. It's a production line job that I do in the winter,
Yeah, I fished some chalk streams back in Pennsylvania where I grew up, and they can be really difficult. So I like a variety of different scuds and shrimp, because sometimes they get so much fishing pressure they just go off. So
Yeah.
thought something new might be good to add to the box.
I'll go and get them and show you later. They're in the back of my truck.
Great.
Yes,
Appreciate
this
it.
is a fly, and it's more of a method of tying a fly than a pattern. I call them rough enoughs, and I've got more of these in my box than any other fly. It's loosely based around the old grey duster patterns, just a simple hackle, dub body, sometimes a tail, sometimes not.
That's all I carry is rough enoughs.
Yeah, mate, honest to God, they're great. Anyway, so again, there's a couple of ways of tying these. This is the way I like tying them. Find a hackle. Right. I'll go on record now and say, I don't care what hackle I put on these. Yeah, I really don't. I don't think it makes the slightest bit of difference. But how you tie them does. Yeah. So because we're Welsh, we're going to have cock a bondi tonight, just to show off. Yeah. Stephen, it's cock a bondi. So catch that in the same way. So again, I'm tying it in first. And then for tails, I mean, I do use cocktail leon, don't get me wrong, but what I mostly use is just like really old, cheap Indian hen capes. Sorry, cock capes. They come in all sorts of great colours, and they make great tails. They're as we'll see now. they're not as long as Coq de Leon, but you spend £8 or £9 on a plume of Coq de Leon and throw away £6 of it. But anyway, so this is going to be the tailed version. So there's maybe what, 7 or 8 fibers there. But to measure it, they'll go, yeah, oh yeah, it's got to be length of the hook shank, or it's got to be half the length, or whatever it's got to be. I just go, get my finger and I go, that looks about right. I use that to measure it. Swap hands. I always tie the tail in right up the top of the hook and use the tips of the tail to guide the thread down. So we've only got one layer of thread there. So if we're into tiny little flies, you're not building up, lots of thickness there. So I'll take this off. And the body on a rough enough has got to be easier, I think. Or maybe one of Mr. Hankins biots. I haven't tried it yet. And again, I'm not too fussed on the colour, unless it's yellow made done, and then it'll be yellow. So I'll just dub it on fairly tightly. Start at the eye. Go back. Leave a bit of thread at the bottom. I don't worry too much about taper, but once you start winding the thread back through it, you sort of get a taper and a rib. That off. Park your thread at the 1/3 point. Start winding your hackle. Back to the thread. Now what you'll notice now, you have no fibre sticking out over the eye. Catch it in with the thread. Just wiggle it gently forward. 1 or 2 turns maybe. That's all.
How do I do it?
That's it. And then we're finished. Job done. That's one way of tying them, and I sort of like that way because it's. Someone called me the Antichrist of fly tying once, so I try and stick to that. So that's a very robust dry fly that won't come apart. Looks okay. Now, when I fish these, I think that's too neat. I think that's too neat. Once you've learned to tie a good dry fly hackle, you've lost most of the fish catching ability you have, because perfect flies for photographs don't fish as well as rough flies. And I always say to beginners, when I'm teaching beginners, don't worry what your flies look like, because they will catch fish. So with a rough enough, I tie them like this, chuck them in a box, all different colours, whatever's laying on the desk. And then before I fish them, I do this. And that's why you need a good hackle tie-in. I do this, and I'm not taking the piss, I'm not joking. I put a tiny bit of floating on the tip of my little finger, and I put it on top of the fly like that. And that's it. And we catch more fish on that than anything else, dry fly wise. And I love tying dry flies with lovely hackles, but for fishing, that works. It works and it floats. I say the rough enough, and it's called the rough enough because we were fishing up, and I was catching a few fish, and the guy I was with said, "Oh, have you got a fly you use?" And I said, "Yeah." So I give him a fly box, and I said, "Pick a rough one, pick a rough one." And he pulled it out and he went, "Is it rough enough?" So that's why it's called a rough enough. Any questions, guys?
Yes, please, Paul. Just a quickie. Do you fish still waters at all?
A lot, yeah. I fished
Right. Okay. Right. Start off at 10, though, conferring. Top 3 flies for a still water.
For around here, cockabonny.
Yeah. Yeah.
A pearl-backed Delbach.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I would say for around here, small dark sedge dry fly.
Okay. Thank you.
So that would be my dream team, I suppose.
Thank you.
So it's not pronounced Koch e Bondahu.
No, mate, it's CH is in Welsh. Yeah.
Okay,
Cork-
I just wanted to make sure.
Cork means red. Bon is bon, as you would say, and double D is pronounced th. So it's cockabon the. Cockabon the. Yeah, and the is black. Cockabon the. I call them cockabundi, so don't worry about it. You know, that's the the pronunciation. And you know, originally, like the old cockabundi, everyone says it's got to be black, red, black, where in fact they used to sell cockabundi hackles in all different colors. So if you look back through old catalogs, I'm talking turn of the last century, a little bit before, a badger hackle that is black, white, black is classed as a cockabundi. There's several Welsh patterns that call for blue dun cockabundi. And they were all the boys around here were breeding their own chickens, fighting birds, you know, cockfighting, little bantam, you know, game cocks, and everyone had. Well, if you were the sporting variety, you had a yard full of little fighting cocks, and they used to pull feathers off and tie a few flies as well, I'm sure. But yeah, so the cockabundi was a fighting bird from the valleys in Wales, basically. And the other one they say that's associated with this area is Andalusian, which is like a grey dun, especially the hen birds. And a lot of our patterns specify Andalusian hackles. But, you know, they're going to be later. Andalusians didn't get here till 1850. They came from southern Spain. So I think it's probably mean blue dun. So, you know, there was a lot of blue dun hackles around here. So those are the two main hackles they used to use. Anyway, so this next one is a new one. I've only tied a few of them, and I've only fished it once, and I fished it once on Monday and caught one fish on it. So I went to BFFI this year, and I met this guy from Sweden who was tying the most amazing flies. This is him. This guy, Mayfly.se. Anyway, so he was using a lot of foam, and it's not something I've used much. But yeah, anyway, so he was selling this stuff. So these are from Sibai or whatever. I think it's Italian. Yeah, but it's a really nice quality foam. It's not that sort of spongy stuff. It's quite firm. So I bought a load of this. Yeah, it's nice. So I bought it in tan, brown, olive. And the thing I really liked about it was what he was doing with it. Let me show you something. So you get a bit of this foam. You get a pair of forceps. Forceps. Foam in the forceps. Like so. Clamp them right down. And then, see that square bit at the end there? I just start to trim that off if you can, just gently. Don't have to be perfect. And then you get yourself, I normally use the gas ring on a cooker, but I've got a lighter, so heat this up. If this was normal foam and I've tried it, it just melts away. But this sort of holds.
Lift it up a bit, Paul.
Sorry, can you see it?
Yeah, there, perfect.
Yeah, so I'm just just heating up the tip of the forceps. And then when they cool down a bit, let it go. You get this.
Sweet.
How cool is that, Pete?
Yeah, that's sweet.
Yeah, right. So I thought the same as you. When I watched him do this, I thought, right, I want it. So I just bought a load of it. So I thought daddy long legs, right? When I saw this, I thought daddy long legs. Yeah. And then once I tried the olive, I thought Grannom Pupa. All right. So I don't know if you boys fish Grannom hatches, but they it's a cloud hatch. It's just masses and masses of flies. They all emerge at once and they all fly upstream. and you think that's the time to fish, but it ain't. You know, they're gone. They just all they got in mind is they want to go stream and breed. So the time to be there is either before that emergence happens or just on the point of it happening. And then sometimes you can catch them on a shuttlecock, sometimes on a sedge pupa under the surface, or at the end of the hatch, when all the shucks and cripples and everything, all the remnants of the hatch end up in the back eddies, and you know, you'll see literally tens of thousands of husks and failed hatching insects. So that's a good time to fish the Grannom hatch, is when the fish are mopping up after the hatch. You'll see them rise. You think they're taking dry flies, but they're not. They're taking the debris left over from the hatch, you know. So I thought, right, floating Grannom Pupa. So this is the flyer tide. And again, it's not rocket science. So this is a hook I particularly like as well. It's not a fly hook, it's a carp hook. Extraordinarily strong. Shame they only come in 10s, but if you see them, they're good for flies as well as catching a big carp. Just change the camera. That's still in focus, lads.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Again, this is like super simple. So it's a short layer of thread. Get your little body. Only going to be that long. Cut it to a point on the front. Catch it in. And the eye.
Look at the segmentation on that.
It's like instant gratification, isn't it?
Perfect.
And it makes a great daddy body as well. So yeah, so when you look at these things in the water, they might have one wing all twisted up, they might have two wings all draggled behind them. So you can mess about with a bit of CDC if you want and put something on there. I don't personally think it's necessary, but I sort of put a little bit on. Just take one feather, snip out the tip. Strip off most of the base. So it looks like that. And just catch it in. Hit either side of the hook. Loose wrap. Then you get some nice straggly bits. Fishing a floating pupa, I'd never thought of doing before. I went to Sweden a few years ago and got my ass handed to me by boys fishing these floating pupas when I was fishing a dry fly. And they totally, you know, I come away from that river thinking, right, I've learned something big time, important, you know. So don't be scared of fishing a pupa in a full-on hatch. And then just put a bit of a head on the front of the fly. And this is it. So I haven't got a name for this one yet, but like I said, I caught a fish on Monday on it. I'm just catching, you know, I don't know if you boys do fish Grannom hatches, but catching a fish in a Grannom hatch is quite an achievement. I always sort of feel it's more luck than judgment, you know what I mean? That's it.
Such a simple tie as well, isn't it?
Nothing to it, is there?
Perfect.
Yeah. So again, if you want to use these things for daddy bodies, I mean, they easily over an inch long with these forceps. So I'll do that next time. Do you mind if I break for a smoke break, guys?
Looks like a hoverfly.
Yeah, it could be anything, couldn't it?
Hey, Paul, I have a request. When after break, would you demonstrate that body again?
Which body?
The foam body, the
Yeah, of
segmented,
course.
segmented foam. Thank you.
Yeah, I've actually got some of this. Some of this is what I'm sending to you, mate.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah. I'll just go to my truck and get those flies to show Eric.
Thank you, sir. Don't forget your cigarette on the way.
I won't.
Smoke one for me.
Derek,
Yeah,
this is a similar thing from about 7 or 8 years ago.
what's that, Paul?
Can you see it?
No, I've got him pinned. So
Oh,
you
right.
say center screen.
Yeah,
Hang on a minute, I'll go to your thing at the top and you can hold it up for me. Where have you gone? You're hiding. There we are. Oh yeah. Very similar, isn't it?
yeah.
Very similar. There's a multitude of uses for that, isn't there?
Yeah, this one was done. It was some sort of man-made material that they just warmed it up and rolled it, and it actually looks like sort of a mottled cream and browns.
But with those little foam cylinders that Paul is using, if you warm them underneath and roll them, you can get a nice taper to them as well.
Yeah, you can. I'm quite excited about them, really. And the gentleman that I got them from was tied all sorts of stuff with them. And you can actually, if you buy the sheet foam, they do a sheet foam, it's very thin. You can say sandwich it together and have black, red, black, for instance. Put those 3 colors in the forceps, and by the time you've heated them, they all come out fused together. It's pretty cool, actually. And of course, then if you go and want to dentist supply stores or medical, you can get all different types of bloody forceps. You can get wide ones, thin ones, all sorts. I haven't gone that far yet, but you know, I'm tempted. Right, Eric, these are those flies.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So these are extremely heavy. So that's a 12.
Okay. Wow.
So,
That's a beauty.
why is the camera gone off? Oh, there it is. So yeah, that's a 12. So they're made in stages. So the underbody is a piece of roofing lead cut with nail clippers. Yeah, and then you tie that on top of the hook with the base color thread. So in this case, it's like an olive, and you just cover the entire thing with thread, and you soak it with epoxy. Then when you put the hackle on, you start again with a different color thread. Yeah, so this in this case it's a darker brown. So you start at the head. Sorry, you start at the arse end, attach the thread, and then that's a folded hackle. So it's just like a folded hackle on a wet fly, except instead of wrapping it around the hook, I've used the thread and wrapped it under the hook, just to like rivet, hold it on. Yeah, then the spots are just a different color epoxy. Yeah, and then you give it another coat of epoxy over the whole thing. So they're quite labor intensive to tie, but they're super fast sinkers. This one's on an 18.
Are they pretty durable, Paul?
Oh yeah, they're bulletproof. Yeah, they're very
Yeah,
bulletproof.
they look
If you use UV resin, it'll come off. Yeah, you'll be back to a thread fly in no time. Yeah, but with epoxy, it stays on. Yeah. So I tie them in various different colors. You know, they talk about orange shrimps. I don't know if I've ever seen an orange one. They always look olivey to me, but there's an orange version. Yeah. Why does the cam keep going off?
No, it's good. We can see it. Well, the camera's on.
Oh, it's not for me. Yeah. Anyway, yeah. So that's them, guys. That's them. Maybe another time I'll do some, but
Thank you, sir. I appreciate you taking the time to go to the car to pick those up. Give us a look.
see how much I rate them.
Yeah,
Yeah, they're really good.
agree. Thank you again. Appreciate that.
Yeah. So, have any of you boys been fishing lately? No.
They're nearly all on mute. There's only a couple of not muted.
Yeah. Well, I'm hoping that we're supposed to be having warm weather next week, so maybe we'll get out again.
Largemouth bass here in Oklahoma this weekend.
Yeah. Nice. I've never caught a largemouth bass. But they're fun, aren't they? And they're really aggressive fish.
Very aggressive and uneducated, just the way I like them.
Yeah. A bit like the women. Yeah. So the next fly is going to be a Danica. It's a way of tying them. It's not necessary. I haven't really got the color materials I would like to show you at the moment. I haven't dyed them up lately, but you'll get the idea. So I'm waiting for some very special biots from America. Anyway, so that's a size 10 nymph hook, and this is going to be a dry fly. It's quite a heavy wire. The ones I prefer would be the Partridge BLN, so they're slightly more delicate wire, but this will float.
You say that was a 12?
10. So I would tie these in 8s and 10s. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the tails, I mean, a traditional tail for a Danica would be like 3 or 4 strands of pheasant tail, which I'm going to use, but I normally use moose mane because it's stronger. You know yourselves that pheasant tail could be a bit brittle, but I couldn't find it earlier on. I've had one of those days. So I'm going to use pheasant tail. I'm going to put in probably 3 or 4, whatever my scissors grab. I'm not putting in 5. The tails on the duns aren't massive. Tails on the spinners are. Yeah, so about the length of the hook, I suppose. I'll catch them on top. Try and keep that curve up. Quite like that. Sort of half achieved it there, that's good enough. Take this back. Now you'll notice they do vary from river to river. They vary in size, they vary in color. And of course, we've got 2 types. We've got Danica and Vulgata. Vulgata are the ones you get on still waters. They do vary a lot. You get dark ones, you get pale creamy ones, you get olivey colored ones. So I don't suppose you should worry too much about the color. And when I think about mayfly hatches, I think about like these really stupid flies that are flopping about. I think of it's like watching like 10,000 drunken ice skaters on a lake, in miniature, if you know what I mean. They're all over the place. So it's really getting that sort of size and presence of the fly on the water, I think, more than anything, really. And if they float on their side, fine. If you tie a cripple version, fine. if you want to try one with fan wings and a bit all sort of traditional and perfect, fine. They all work, you know, and just down to how you like to do it, really, I think. So most of them that I see on this river have a dark base to their abdomen. So I just use a bit of the pheasant tail to give it that dark base. Now, in reality, that dark base is mostly on the top of the abdomen, but yeah, that's my nod to being a bit realistic. So this is a cripple version. So I'm going to put in a sort of forward-facing wing. I use CDC, but my favorite really is gear here. Again, because it's very durable. So I've got some here. Let me swap cameras. Yeah, so you see in Mayfly wings, you'll see a lot of olivey tones. You'll see a lot of sort of golden olive tones, sometimes brown. And then when you see the spinners, they're quite dark. You know, they're almost black. So I sort of mess around with these sort of colours. Sometimes natural, and I haven't got any of this type of deer here natural at the minute. So anyway, I'm going to mix these colours up. So the sort of deer here I like is stuff from the flank. So it's not going to spin. It's thin. It's got really fine tips. Yeah. So that's the sort of stuff I like. It's hard to find. You've got to sift through and find it, but you will. So I take a bunch of clumps. I'm just going to do this one in olive and golden olive or yellowish, not too much. So when you've pulled out all the rubbish, that sort of amount, pop that in your stacker. Same again with the olive, maybe a little bit less, I don't know. Whatever comes off the clump, doesn't matter, does it? So that's all much. Put that in there with your yellow. Do your angle tap in, don't forget. Pull out and see what you got. So you've got a sort of mixed olivey wing, and I want the curves. When I tie that on the fly, I want them to go up. So back to the fly. So about the length of the hook out over the eye. Loose turn right round it, and start to tighten, not too much. Next turn, tighten a bit more. Next turn, tighten a bit more. Next turn, tighten a bit more. Now start cranking on it. So you can start pulling it out. Start getting a bit of a taper to your fly. A bit of a taper in there. Now when I get up here, I do this with CDC as well, all the time. So now we've got this clump of fur sticking out the front. I just post a couple of turns. Let's get right down to the eye. Not tight, just a couple. Just to make sure everything's on top of the hook where it should be. And then I start working with that deer here. I run my thumbnail through it, start getting a bit of shape into it. Dubbing, you know, super fine, whatever you want, it doesn't matter. I like this, all different colors of hairs here. So I'm going to use a pale hairs here color, that sort of color. See it? This one it's got some guard hairs, but it's reasonably fine. No wax or anything like that. Just get it on your thread. Job in one direction. You can get that down quite reasonably fine. It's going to be buggy, but it doesn't really matter. That's your body. Then I rub it back through with a thread. I've used brown thread because you know, Danica's a sort of creamy brown. That's that. And then a hackle. So what colour hackle would I put on there, Steve? Not listening. So look.
Cree, of course.
Pardon me?
I said Cree, of course.
Cree, you want Cree? Okay, I'll put Cree on.
That was a joke.
That's all right. A special request, Cree. Fine, you can find one with like quite big fibers, obviously, because it's a big fly. And this one has got plenty on. So I prefer tying with necks myself, but I'll use a hackle if I saddle if I have to. But anyway,
What are your
So-
preference, Paul?
I find the stem or the rachis on a neck hackle to be stiffer than on a saddle, and I think that stiffness helps keeps the fibers more perpendicular. If you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm. Thanks.
I'll show you how I wrap them now. I mean, plus you get all the different sizes on a neck rather than a saddle. But I'm not knocking saddles. I just my personal preference would be a neck, really. But anyway, so when I catch them in, I'll leave a bit of bare rachis showing. And one of the most important things about wrapping a hackle is having a nice even base for it to wrap onto. A lot of problems you see with wrapping hackles is when you don't leave enough room and you wrap the hackle towards the eye, because the hackle will always follow the direction of the shank. Yeah. So as you get towards the eye and it starts to curve down, you see there I've left everything on top of the shank. Yeah. The hackle will stay perpendicular to that wrap. So that's really key to wrapping a dry fly hackle. If that thread base slopes, yeah, you're gonna have all sorts of problems. Like if you're tying in a big hair wing fly like say a wolf or something like that, where you've got two different diameters, one behind the eye and one in front of the eye. Well, you'll know yourselves if you've tried to tie them, it can be quite challenging to get it to sit nice. Yeah. So anyway, so that first wrap of mine there is just bare rachis. Then the second wrap is directly in front. So what I'm trying to do is avoid fibers going backwards here. Yeah. So now as I wrap, I twist the hackle clockwise in my fingers. So it gives it a leading edge, like you're wrapping a wet fly hackle, you know, with a folded wet fly hackle almost. If you catch some, just bring it in front. Bring it in front. And you start getting a nice square edge at the front, see it? And catch that last bit in. All right, we're gonna have a few here. Spin your thread up tight. Go right in it. Keep that hackle vertical, go right in it. Tight now, tight. Second wrap, keep it tight. Don't let any tension off now. Take everything, fold it back. Take a few wraps in front of the wing. Get rid of those hackles you don't like. Keep the tension on. Don't let the tension off, because you've already tied that hackle in with 2 wraps of thread. an angle whip finisher. If we'll do a CDC fly next, I'll show you what that means. And you're in. So you can give this a bit of fuss now, a bit of love if you want. Get rid of your tip. Now these ones I have caught. I like this thing. What a great toy. Watch this. Press the button. Go on. Go on, go on, go on. Get out of the way, fly. So you can get rid of all the little nasties from the front.
Which quarters is that, Paul?
That's like, I don't know, £4 on bloody eBay. Red Zap.
Oh, right, super.
Great little toy. So that's that one, boys. So that's the sort of typical Danica I like tying and fishing. And again, you can clip this hackle, so you can clip it flat on the bottom if you want, so it rides low. You can clip it on its side, so it rides flat on its side. You know, because most of those Danica hatches, when you see them, they're such big flies. I think that the amount of them that actually fail to hatch properly is probably more than actually gets off the ground, if you know, or off the water, if you know what I mean. Anyway.
When do you expect the Danica hatch to occur?
Last week of May into June. So I've booked 4 days on the chalk for the first week of June. So they should be well on. If you catch them early, you know it's okay, but the fish take a few days to get used to them. If you get them in the middle of the hatch, then they just gorge on them. They really do.
Sorry, Stephen.
Sorry.
Which river are you going for, Paul?
I've got 2 days on the test and 2 days on the Cannet. So for the first week of June. So I've got a rod on the wilderness beat on the Cannet. So I've got 1 day a fortnight normally on there. And that's just slightly west of Newbury. So you know where the A34 goes down, it crosses the bottom end of that beat. So the beat below it is Benham Park, which I used to be on, and that's very nice. But they've put that on some sort of online fishing thing now, so you can book there and pay for a day, which is fine. But you know, if you've got a season rod there, you could go down there 1 day and there's 6 or 7 other blokes down there fishing. You know. So I sort of come off that, and then you've got on a test. You've got John Lewis own a stretch of it. So when you go into a John Lewis shop, all their veg is grown on this estate. I think it's called Leckford. So all their UK grown veg is grown there. So it says Leckford veg, but they own miles of the test. It used to be the Wills estate, the cigarette people, you know.
Yeah.
They own miles of it. So it starts, you know, the Mayfly pub.
No,
the Mayfly. I think that's the best pub in the world. It's right on the side of the river. It's lovely. So it starts in the Mayfly pub. They've got, I don't know how many of these, 16, I think, probably loads of them. So I've got a day a fortnight on that too. So that's my season rod on there. And that's lovely fishing. Some of those beats, Ivor fishes it a lot, I think. It's lovely. It really is.
so that would be your first choice of, fly, is it, for that type of fishing?
I fish the Mayfly on there. I enjoy that because it's so unique. We don't get many big flies like that here, do we?
No.
You know, I love the sight fishing there for with a nymph. And then through the summer, the caddis hatches in the daytime could be amazing. So when I go down there, I take, apart from the Mayfly, I take those shrimps, lots of them, because I lose lots of them. I take those nymphs I tied earlier on. I take a size 14 CDC caddis. I take a size 18 or 20 beadhead nymph. I take a clink hammer to fish clink and dink with them. and then a load of shuttlecocks, all different sizes and colours, and that's it. Don't take anything else. So it's like five patterns, 6 patterns. That's it. Or maybe sometimes later on in the year, Daddy Longlegs is good on it as well. It's really good fun. But yeah.
No, I always like the French, French partridge mayflies, I must admit.
Yeah, well, there's so many different types, aren't there? And it's whatever you like doing. It doesn't matter. I got into these hairwing ones. There's a guy called Philip White.
Yeah.
That used to own a company called Lathgill Tackle up in Derbyshire. A fly tying shop, and I used to go up there fish on the Dove quite a lot, and on the Wye, and I got to meet him, and he was a head keeper on the Duke of Rutland estate up there for a long part of his life, and he devised a series of hairwing mayflies, and I got obsessed with them because they worked everywhere I took them. So these are just like slight variations of what you showed me all them years ago.
It was the Haddon Hall estate, Paul.
Pardon me?
The Haddon Hall estate.
Haddon Hall, that's correct.
Yeah.
That's it. And then he worked in sport fishing in Reading for a while. And now he's back out in Ireland. He's moved out to Ireland. He's fishing all the big lakes out there. God bless
He's
him.
back, isn't he?
I don't know.
I think he's back and retired, isn't he now?
I think so.
Yeah, the last time I saw him was at the Irish Fly Fair a few years ago before lockdown.
Yeah, I think he's back. I think he's back.
Good for him. Good for him. Right, Steve, those foam cylinders. Which one is it? It's that one. Foam. So these are 2.8 millimeter ones. You can get smaller ones, I think, which might not be a bad idea. And then the forceps, if you notice, have got a gap at the back. So if you wanted to do a mayfly body or you can get 2 out of 1 piece of foam. So all I did is cut the foam. I actually cut it too long in the last one, so I've cut this piece about 8 millimeters long. Put it in there. Try and just sort of even that end up a bit. Yeah, and just clamp them tight. And then I use just a pair of scissors just to sort out the end a bit, because when you heat it up, it'll naturally round it out. And then heat the metal, not the foam, if you can. Can't see it drinking. And you'll see the tip of the foam going black. And then once it's done that a bit, that's it. And then let that cool. You don't want to be grabbing that when it's hot. And there's your little camera. There. There's your little body. And I like to say, when you take that out and it's still warm, you can roll it in your fingers and you get a more round shape, if you like. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then last one, boys. What time is it?
8:10.
8:10.
I've got time for a bit more. What did we talk about? Yeah, CDC. So my favourite fly of all time, I guess. I can remember when I first saw this. One of my favourite, talking about the Kennet, funny enough, one of my early favourite flies was, the suspender buzzers we used to make that had the poly ball inside the stocking.
Stockings, yeah.
Yeah, well, that come from the Kennet. That was a guy called gone. Anyway, so they used to tie them in tiny sizes for the midge, and I fished them on reservoirs at the time, places like Wentwood near here, and I caught loads of fish on suspender buzzers, lots. It was like my favourite fly ever. And when I first saw CDC used in that way, it was like a light going on for me because the poly balls used to get crushed. You know, and sometimes they float, sometimes they wouldn't. It was just a pain in the ass. And this guy called Clive Perkins, who was fishing down in Kent, somewhere on the Kent waters, come up with it. I thought it just made total sense. So yeah, so we started fishing them on still waters mainly for emerging buzzers, and then gradually we went over on to using them on rivers, and then yeah, it's just taken over really. You look in any of the fly boxes around here, anybody you meet, there's a high proportion of shuttlecock style flies for the river. You know, but yeah, so the ones I tie are basic shuttlecocks. There's a few little nuances in them, a few little tips maybe, if there's any use to you. So I'll tie one. So here's me. So this is a size 14. It's called light wire dry fly hook. This is a Denon. No, it's not. It's a Maruto DO4.
Nice hooks.
Yeah, lovely. Yeah, lovely. So because this is an olive, I'm going to change it to an olive thread if I can see any laying around. No, I can't see any. So this is going to be a brown olive. Right. So the key to these is keep them skinny and not too much CDC really. Hard to say. So for like a size 14, I'd probably say 3 boom tips, and I'll show you how much I use as we go along. You can, depending on how you tie this CDC in, you can fish this particular pattern as a shuttlecock or an F-fly or an upright or a cripple. Just depends on how you adjust the wing. But I'll show you how to set the wing that you can have all those different options. I put tails on them, but I quite often take the tails off when I fish them. And it just depends if I feel the fish are taking duns, so if they're horizontal in the surface, or if they're taking emerges where they're more vertical. And if you get a bit of floating on a tail, even if it's just from the side of your nose or something, a bit of grease off your face or off your skin, these things will float flat, you know, and you don't always want that. So I put the tail in, but I'm more than ready to take it out when I'm fishing. So the tail again would be either Coq de Leon or, you know, Indian hackle. I'm going to use Indian hackle because it's here. So I tie these in lots of different sizes, in 3 different colors. So I tie them in black, in 18s and 20s for the midge. I tie them in olive from 12 down to 20. And I tie them in yellow in size 14, just for the yellow made down. So I've got my little tail in there. All the way back to the eye. So again, we want quite a nice smooth underbody on this. CDC, where are they? There. I use 3 on a 14. Quite small feathers, not massive. These are about 3 centimeters long. That sort of size. And the shape you want is this sort of triangular shape. Yeah, so when you bring those fibers forward, you've got nice even tips. So I'll take 3 of them. There's a couple of ways of tying them in. I even up the tips, so the curve will go in the same way. Yeah, and when I tie these in, I want the curve going up. It's far too much fluff on the base of these for my liking, so I've got rid of that. So I'm left with that. So I want them all going in the same direction. Give them a bit of love, preen them a bit. Yeah, there's two ways you can tie these in. Here's one way. So I put it bare on the shank, take 2 loose turns, and I pull from this side. I put my fingernail underneath and the thumbnail. That stops it spinning around the hook, and you can pull it to length. Yeah, so that's a nice way of doing it. The other way I see loads of people doing it is just racking it in as a clump on the top. But I sort of like that, and it gives you that nice flat finish. Keeps the curve all going the same way. So now that's tied in with 3 turns of thread. So now as you go down, start tightening up. Another 3 or 4, and then trim it. Now to get your taper, and this is true of tying in anything wind-wise, when you cut it, don't cut it in line with the shank. Cut it at an angle to the shank. And I like using curved scissors because straight scissors I quite often find I cut the tail. So I use the curved scissors and I cut towards me. I've taken too much there, talking too much. You don't want these long fibers past the tail, boys. That's my mistake, sorry. So with that tapered cut that cuts towards you, essentially what it's done is it put the long fibers on my side of the hook because I've cut it at an angle coming towards me. So then as I wrap it, those long fibers are taken up on top of the hook. So you get that lovely taper without having to worry too much about it spinning around the hook shank.
Yeah, good.
Nice little method there. So then your body, okay, could be anything. Again, I'm going to use EP fibers, just like them, and it's easy and it's cheap. So I've got about 4 or 5 there. So I just tuck them in where I want them. Like that, take a couple of turns. It's so fine, you don't have to worry about, building up any lumps on the taper. Go forward. Try and keep that CDC where you want it. You want to take it forward right to the eye. You're quite brutal with it at this stage. So there's your little tuft. Yeah. And what I do is I lift it, I post it. 3 or 4 turns, right? Then finish off, lock your work. Now what that does, that post is like a little spring. So if you want to fish it upright, there you go. If you want to fish it more like a dun, there you go. And you can do that on the river. So that post is like just like a little spring that lets you move it back and forth. Just at least 2 different flies in one there. And start wrapping this stuff forward. You can see I've got 1 darker piece in there. I'm getting a nice rib. That's just luck. Luck of the pick. Now you could tie this as a cripple. You could put a hackle in if you want. You could leave it just like that, and I have lots in my box just like that. Or you can put in a little bit of dubbing, which I'm going to do because you boys look at that and think there's nothing to it. It can't work. So just a little bit of spiky dubbing. I like squirrel. I probably prefer squirrel for this than hares here. So what have I got here? I don't know if this is squirrel or not, but that's a nice, got a bit of sparkle in it as well. So a lot of guys that fish these shuttlecocks put a little bit of pearl in there, like a little bit of pearl at the butt, like a mirage type tinsel, or at the thorax. That works. And you want a really spiky, if you're going to put a spiky leggy thing on there, make it spiky and leggy. Couple of turns behind, build up a thorax, and then go in front of the bare thread. So if we were, this is the reason I tied this was to show you this whip finish idea. So my wings forward, I've tied a shuttlecock this wing forward, and I want to whip finish this without disturbing anything. So what I tend to do is go in and whip finish at the same angle as the wing. So you move your whip finisher vertically. You haven't caught one fibre. That's a good little tip that sort of saves my bacon quite a lot. That's it, the shuttlecock. Gareth Lewis ties, he loves his shuttlecocks, and not this BFFI, the one before. I was up there with him, and he was tying these March Brown ones, and they were enormous, great big things. And he had, I've got those how many feathers in them on a big curve, like check nymph type hook. I mean, really nice looking flies, but I've looked for. And I said, "What are they for?" And he said, "Oh, they're for the March Brown." I thought, "No, they're too big." And I didn't say that to him, but he said, "Yeah, take some and try them." By God, they work. And so that would, that fly would have had a body twice the length of this, and a massive wing with 5 or 6 feathers in, and they just come up and hammered it constantly. Really good fly. And yes, once they get fish slime on them, they're not so good, but who cares? Just tie 100 of them and put them in your box, Anyway, do you boys fish shuttlecocks?
I have Blagden, but not a. It's not the first fly I'd go to.
They do well on Clywedog.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, I've
Fished
seen
in New
these
Zealand style.
Yeah. Yeah. I see the American contingent is quiet.
This particular half of the American contingent was up tucking in my little girl, so I didn't hear a word you said in the last 5 minutes.
I wasn't aiming at you, Eric. I was aiming at Stephen because he told me he'd never ever fished one. Yeah. Anyway,
I'll fish anything that catches fish.
yeah, that's what I like to think. I'm not. I'll tie all sorts of things, but the ones I carry lots of are really simple things normally. Yeah. So is there anything else you want interested in seeing, guys?
Paul, what was that hook that you showed us right at the beginning, that slight curved one?
This one? That one there?
No, not that one. Right at the very beginning, you showed us flying up.
I think
This one. I've lost you. Hayabusa 270.
Yeah, I think that's the one. Yeah.
I quite like it. It's got a wider gate than the normal ones of this style. Can have quite a narrow gate, but these are quite nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Bob Lomax does a hatching mayfly on that, on an emerging mayfly.
Is that the one that's got the front bent up?
No, he doesn't. But it's quite a nice fly that he does.
Mm-hmm.
And he uses the paraloop.
The what? Sorry, paraloop.
He uses a paraloop, yeah.
Yeah, nice.
And it does fetch him up, but it makes him pay attention sometimes.
Yeah.
I don't know whether you can see this or not.
I got you. Yeah. I've lost you again now. Let me just. How do I? I've lost you. Where are you gone?
Keep holding it there, Paul.
Pardon me?
I'm saying to Paul DeVille to keep he's holding it in front of his camera for you.
Yeah.
And the fly.
Yeah. It's like It looks like a what do you call it? A Quigley cripple type fly, doesn't it? But just with the oh god, brain dead. Different hackle on it. I can see that working.
What was that quarterizing tool again, Paul? That you got
Pardon
off eBay? What was that quarterizing tool that you got off eBay?
Oh yeah, it's called.
Thread zap.
It was off Amazon.
No.
I'll put it down. I can't find it. Thread zap or something. It's called.
What sort of
Thread zap,
price is
yeah.
that, Paul?
Hmm?
What sort of price was that one?
For about
£4.
11 quid I've seen one for.
Oh, I've seen them cheaper than that, mate.
God,
I've
that's
heard-
cheaper than the old hairline one, which I use.
Yeah, I was looking for one and I couldn't find one to buy anywhere. And then I thought, let's have a look on Amazon.
That's what I use, the old hairline ones.
Yeah, yeah, and you can buy little replacement tips for them because they don't last forever.
Yeah.
No, I could get tips for this one as well.
Yeah, good. I put
But I
it down.
think
I can't
tips
find
was dearer than what you packed.
it. Mm. Yeah. Yeah. So I've had a bit of a shit day, to be honest with you. I woke up this morning, I had breakfast and broke a tooth. Had to
You
go.
broke a tooth?
Yeah, it split down the middle.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so I phoned the dentist, so I had to go and see her at 11:30. She took half the split out, left the other half in. I've got to go back next week. She's telling me I need some sort of reconstructive bloody. Sounds expensive, whatever it is. I know it's going to be expensive. You know what dentists are like. So
You
I
can
had
bet
that.
your bottom, you can bet your
Oh, yeah.
bottom dollar on that.
Yeah, and then I come home and my missus works from home and she's been giving me hell all day. And yeah, been a good day really. Apart from, you know, this is the best part of it.
You weren't biting nylon, I broke mine like that.
Oh, I haven't got many of my own teeth left, mate. Oh, there's the cauterizer.
I was just going out fishing one day and bit it, bass fishing, bit it. And my tooth went all over the garage and that.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh well, there we are. So yeah, so unless there's anything else, boys, I've sort of come to a natural conclusion at the minute, if that's all right with you.
That's been absolutely excellent.
That's
Okay.
fine, Paul.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah, brilliant.
Thanks, Paul.
You're more
Thanks,
than
Paul.
welcome.
Thank
Always
you,
a-
Paul.
Thank you, Paul.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Derek. Cheers,
Paul.
Derek.
Cheers.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Cheers, guys.